Okay, it's Freeze Cracked back. It's about the third video I started talking about beginner and new stuff, and one of the things I'm talking about is tools, and I just talked about percussion and abrading on another thing on the copper stuff. And now I'm going to talk about well, this is a separate issue. One of the things a lot of people have trouble with when they're making just little arrowheads is they want to use a thin flake for that. And thin flakes can be a total pain to shape if you're just sitting there with pressure and trying to take individual flakes off of them. So some people will take and flatten out a piece of copper tubing or something and make a little tool that they use to do initial shaping of a thin flake. And what they'll do is they'll take and put a piece of stiff leather on their leg or something, take the thin flake, and it's called shearing. They'll take and they'll just roll a flat piece of copper or something along the edge and just cut off. It just kind of cuts the edge. Let me see if I got a flake here. That's not a good flake. I don't know if you can see this at all, but they'll just take and go like this. And that's called shearing. And anyway, it works pretty good, and it just gets you down into the stuff. And I'm going to talk, you know, someday I'll make an arrowhead on film and talk about at least one other way to do that kind of stuff. But anyway, a shear. All right. Now I guess I'll talk about notching tools. There's different ways to notch. And I do different techniques. I do pressure notching, but I also do punch notching. And punch notching use percussion, and pressure use pressure. So anyway, here's two pressure notching tools that I use. This is just a pin vise that has a horseshoe nail with the head cut off stuck in it. Horseshoe nails are cool because they're mild steel and you can sharpen them to an extremely sharp point, and you can do really fine little notching work with them. Here's one that another napper made, and it's some pieces of brass fittings and pipe and stuff that he got, and he's got like epoxy or something in here where he's made it to where it fits a horseshoe nail, and you know, you can just unscrew it and replace the horseshoe nail, and you got something that holds the horseshoe nail back up in there. But this is another variant of kind of what the pin vise does. And so then, where's my other pin vise thing? Oh, here's another pin vise with just a copper nail in it where you could start doing notching with, although this is too thick really to do a lot of notching. But you can get small, you can find all different sizes of these little copper nails, so you can get a really fine copper nail. The problem with them is they bend easily, and depending upon what you're notching, if you're notching like glass or obsidian, it's no big deal, you can use copper, but maybe, but a lot of times it's better to use like a horseshoe nail, which it slips more on the edge, but it's stronger. Here's a weird variant of that. I've taken an ishi stick, which is a long tool that's used to give you greater leverage and protect your wrists and stuff more when you're doing heavy pressure work. And I've got a flattened copper squared off in nail in there, and that can be helpful sometimes for flaking. And this is not flattened enough. I really should have beat on this and filed on this before I showed it to you. But this is an interesting tool. What it is, it's a cut off. This right here is called a skirting spike, and it's super strong steel that doesn't bend easily. And they use them for like nailing the skirting onto mobile homes. And I got it from a mobile home supply. You cut the heads off, and it'll fit into your ishi stick, and you can hammer the crap out of it and make it flat and then file it. And what I like to do sometimes is to file it down thin, but put a bevel on it, kind of on the end. And the bevel helps that when you push in on a platform and leverage, it tends to push in and down at the same time, so it's really helpful to take a flake. And a lot of times I'll come up underneath in a notch. When I'm trying to do a deep notch, like on an andice, I'll come up underneath the notch and just grab a little edge of it and do it, and it's safer than breaking off the ears and stuff. It's less risky. Anyway, so that's that. Then there's punches. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there's all kinds of little different variants, and I don't even know if you can see this. But what it is just a little copper nail, and it's hammered flat. And then I have filed a couple of steps in it. And the reason I filed the steps in it is not, it could have just been left flat on the end, but the steps sometimes help me space it where I don't get too big a bite on the edge of a platform. But anyway, I'll take and I'll just put my point on here, and like on a pad, I can put it on a leather pad or whatever, but I'll put my point on there, and I go ahead and start my notch like with a horseshoe nail, and then I'll put this in here and hold it and strike it with a lightweight striker of some kind. In this case, it's like a hickory thing. Just hit it and it'll take the flake. There's a lot of technique involved in notching. You might not believe it, but it's at least as complex as anything else. And I think a reason a lot of people have trouble with breaking the ears off their points and stuff is they don't realize that. They don't master the technique and understand the little processes that are going on that little bitty notch. So anyway, topic for another show. Okay, so what else? I want to show you some hand pressure flakers. I do not use, for the most part, hand pressure flakers. The reason I don't is they're hard on the wrist, and I can't get as much power. But this is a Delrin one. It's got a couple of set screws, got a little wrench in the back. You can loosen the set screws, pull it out, beat on it to make it sharp, or file it, whatever, and tighten your set screws up and go. And you keep doing that. You use long nails and you just keep moving them out as they wear down or whatever. This kind of stuff you can get from flintknapper supply places. Okay, so what else about copper specifically? I'll just talk about ishii sticks or whatever. This is an ishii stick. It's flexible. This particular one is double-ended with two different sizes of copper in it. Most of the time you see single-ended ones. But what this does is important. It allows me to use my upper body and my legs instead of the strength in my wrist and my forearm, and it increases the leverage. I can put 4 times as much pressure on a point and get much bigger and better flakes with this than I can with a hand flaker. So you say, well, why do people use ishii sticks? That's why. Protects my arm, and it allows me to become as much of a gorilla as I can be in applying huge pressure to stuff. And the way that it works basically is the back end goes on your rib cage, the front end is in your wrist, and your forearm kind of pushes on it and allows you to sort of lean forward, keeping your wrist locked against your legs tight, and just sort of lean forward in the end and stuff, and just put lots and lots of pressure and with your legs and your upper body. So anyway, try an ishii stick if you've never tried one. You may find it allows you to become a monster too. This is my arm. You see monster there? Yeah. Okay, so other thing is, of course, you need a file to file your copper stuff, and you need like a little bronze brush or something to get all the little crap out of your file so that your file continues to work. Other than that, and a few little punches and things, I almost never use this, but I got it. I think it's kind of cool in a way, but this is some kind of little tool piece that's got a diamond embedded in it. It's like a flat diamond thing, but I really haven't used it, so I don't know if I should recommend that or not. I probably shouldn't even show it to you. Oh, pads. You got to have a pressure flaker pad. And some people just use leather, like something like this, especially the Abo people, but some people use leather and some people use notched pads. This is a homemade notched pad that's used like a piece of belt material with a piece of leather glued on the back of it, and then just cut a little notch in there. This is one that's made with wood and a piece of belt material and a notch. And then this is the one I actually use, And what this is it's a commercial. This came from Flintknapping Tools. He makes these things in 2 different sizes. There's a 1/2 inch thick variant, and like this is probably 1/2 3/4. It's a rubberized material, and it comes with a little notch in it. But what I've done is I got a guy that had a bed liner shop to make me kind of a hand fitting, form fitting bed liner material backing that I glue the pad to. And what that does, the reason I did it was it makes, I don't have to squeeze my hand closed as much, so it's easier on my fingers. This Flintknapping Tools, these particular ones are grabbier, the rubber is. So when you put a point against it and hold it up there, you don't have to hold it as tight, so it's easier on your fingers. It doesn't tend to slip down as much when you push on it. Leather, like here's a homemade one someone made, and it's leather. Well, they even made a little flap to cover up like the point to hold it on there to where, and it was ingenious, and I bought it because, you know, doing a little business at a deal, but it's slipperier. It doesn't hold the point as well against downward motion, and that's how I keep from breaking points. You know, I don't put inward pressure holding it tight up against there that might snap it. I just hold it enough and put a finger under it to keep it from sliding down, and then I can do my pressure in there. So anyway, that's that. So is that all I wanted to say about copper at the moment? It may be, as far as the tools go. But try everything. There's all kinds of different variants. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, well, I'm 12 minutes in. Should I talk about abo? Or should I just wait and start an abo tools thing? I don't know that I have 15 minutes worth of stuff to say about abo tools. I'm going to talk about abo tools real fast. The craziest thing is a trend with abo tools is hitting big tough stuff that doesn't flake well with fast flakes. Some of the guys in the Northeast are hitting quartzites and stuff like that and hitting some really bad, difficult rock to use, and sometimes they're using wood. And this is a billet I made out of mesquite, which is a dense wood that's local here. I'm in Southeast Texas. It's actually more to the west, but at any rate, mesquite's pretty dense. But dogwood, persimmon, stuff like that, it's really hard. It's kind of good for some tools. So anyway, something like this, believe it or not, you can take flakes with this. And you can take some pretty good flakes if you practice with this kind of stuff. But then Antler gets used a lot. And I don't have a big moose antler billet, but some people use big moose antler billets. Moose antler is really dense. It doesn't have a pithy cortex in the middle, or whatever they call the middle, cancellous bone. It doesn't have pith in there, and it's hard and dense, and it works really well. Usually you use the part of the antler that's up against the head, the burl part of the antler, for your striking part, because that's super dense. This is a medium size one. This isn't for big work. I wouldn't really recommend this, but I just ended up with it. This is like an elk antler, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a lot more pith in it that's not very strong, but I hit with the outer surface of it, and it works okay. You're going to wear down a lot faster if you use elk or whatever, but whitetail deer billets work pretty well. Whitetail is pretty strong. This is Axis, and it chews up really fast. This is a tine off moose, and it works pretty good. Another tine off moose. Where's a whitetail? We don't have big whitetail around here. This is a small whitetail billet, and I sometimes use it as a punch too. But whitetail is pretty stout up by the antler burl, and it works pretty well. And then that's for hitting. Of course, for pressure work, I'll just grab this out. This is like a little whitetail tine, and that can work good for a hand flake or for pressure work. But get this, and I don't really recommend this, but I do use it. Bones. Bones, the main reason you don't use bones is because they're not as heavy and they're not as dense, so they don't necessarily take a flake as good. But if you're using some softer material that'll flake fairly easily, you might try, if you want to do abo work, try and use a bone sometimes. It's like a metacarpal, actually it's probably a metatarsal off like a cow. But of course, if you want to be cool, you would find a bison one. But I use this once in a while when I'm trying to pretend like I'm like Marty Reeder. It doesn't work, but it's still fun. You know, it's like I don't have a Marty Reeder costume, so I just have a similar tool. What else? You can use other kinds of wood. I don't know if I have any other wood billets here. What time am I? I'm at 15 minutes. Well, I hate to stop in the middle of something and start again, but I'm going to come right back and talk more a little bit about avo stuff.